Get ready to embark on an exciting journey through the biblical history of the Exodus, where freedom is conquered by the power of God. Hello, guys! Be all welcome to our channel dedicated to telling biblical stories. Today we will dive into the epic account of the Exodus, where the Hebrew people are released from slavery in Egypt through the supernatural power of God. Part 1. Slavery in Egypt. In this first part, we will enter the scenario of oppression and suffering experienced by the Hebrew people under the reign of the mighty Pharaoh in Egypt. The Hebrews, who were initially welcome as guests, were gradually subjected to cruel slavery. Pharaoh, fearing the growing population of the Hebrews and their possible covenant with enemies in the case of war, decreed a terrible plan. He ordered all male Hebrew babies to be thrown into the Nile River to perish drowned. Faced with this bleak scenario, the cry of the people climbed to heaven, reaching the ears of God. Amid tears and despair, the Hebrews longed for liberation and a breath of hope in their bitter lives. Thus begins the epic journey towards freedom by divine power. Part 2. The birth of Moses. In this second part, we are transported to a moment of great danger and hope in the history of the Hebrew people. After Pharaoh's cruel decree, a Hebrew mother named Jochebed, in an act of unconditional courage and love, decides to hide her newborn, Moses. With a tight heart, she puts him in a basket made with reed and throws him into the waters of the Nile River, relying on divine care to protect his son. For an incredible turnaround of fate, Pharaoh's daughter comes across the basket while bathing in the river and is touched by the child's fragility. Moved by compassion, he decides to adopt little Moses as his own son, ensuring safety and comfort in the royal palace corridors. Thus, the boy who should have been the victim of cruelty becomes a prince of Egypt, growing under the luxuries and privileges of royalty. This is just the beginning of the incredible journey that will lead Moses to discover his true identity and mission under divine orientation. Part 3. Escape to the desert. In this third part, we are led to witness a crucial moment in the life of Moses, which until then lived as a prince in the palace of Egypt. One day, in witnessing the brutality of an Egyptian against an Hebrew, Moses is taken by a fair anger and ends up killing the aggressor to protect his brother from blood. Realizing that his act had been discovered and that his life was dangerous, Moses decides to escape to Midian, a distant desert region of Egypt. There, he finds refuge and welcome with Jethro, priest of the region, and marries one of his daughters. Far from the luxuries and the opulence of the palace, Moses learns to live a simple life as a shepherd of sheep. This period of isolation and reflection will be fundamental to prepare it spiritually for the great call to come. Thus begins a new stage in the journey of Moses to fulfill the divine purpose in his life. Part 4. Revelation in the burning bush. In this fourth act of the Exodus saga, we are led to witness one of the most sacred and impactful moments of Moses' life. While pasturing his father-in-law's flock in the arid lands of Midian, Moses faces an extraordinary scene in burning bush, who, to his surprise, was not consumed by fire. Curious and intrigued by the unusual vision, Moses decides to approach, and then he listens to God's powerful and majestic voice echoing through the flames. "Moses, Moses," he calls the Lord, revealing his divine presence in the sacred place. Faced with the grandeur of the moment, God identifies himself as "I am what I am," conveying to Moses his eternity, sovereignty, and self-existence. In an act of profound reverence and fear, Moses prostrates himself before the manifestation of the Almighty and receives the divine mission that would change the course of history. God takes over Moses to return to Egypt to free his chosen people from the oppressive slavery imposed by Pharaoh. With renewed courage and the certainty of the divine call in his heart, Moses departs toward the Pharaoh palace to confront the earthly power with heavenly authority. Thus begins an epic chapter of confrontation between human forces and the supernatural power of God in the pursuit of freedom and redemption of the Hebrew people. Part 5. Moses and Aaron. Before Pharaoh, in this fifth act of the saga of Exodus, we are witnesses of one of the most intense confrontations between Moses Aaron. Determined to free the Hebrew people from oppressive slavery, the brothers perform before Pharaoh with a direct and powerful message. Thus saith the Lord, God of Israel, let my people go so that they can worship me. Faced with the divine demand, Pharaoh hardens his heart and refuses to give in to the demands of God's messengers. The pride and arrogance of the Egyptian king crashed into the divine authority represented by Moses and Aaron, triggering a series of supernatural events that would demonstrate the undisputed power of the God of the Hebrews over the pagan gods of Egypt. With each refusal of Pharaoh in freeing the chosen people, a new plague plagues the Egyptian land, bringing suffering and desolation. However, even before the trials sent by God, the heart of Pharaoh remains hardened in his obstinacy. This epic confrontation between the earthly and divine forces will culminate in a crucial time for the liberation of the Hebrew people. Prepare to witness to God's manifestation of God's supernatural power before human resistance. The battle for freedom is just beginning. Part 6. The 10 Pests of Egypt. This sixth part of the Exodus saga, we witness the manifestation of divine power through the 10 pests sent over Egypt. Each plague was a sign of God's supremacy over the Egyptian gods and a demonstration of their faithfulness to protect and free their chosen people. 1. Blood in the Nile. The water of the Nile River is transformed into blood, causing death and destruction. 2. Frogs. A frog infestation invades Egypt, covering everything from the palaces to people's beds. 3. Lice. The soil turns into clouds of lice that afflict men and animals. 4. Flies swarms invade the houses of the Egyptians, bringing disease and despair. 5. Plague in animals. Egyptian cattle is hit by a devastating plague, while the cattle of the Hebrews remain unharmed. 6. Ulcers. Painful wounds appear in the skin of the Egyptians, causing suffering and agony. 7. A hailstorm rocks the Egyptian plantations, destroying harvests and properties. 8. Grasshoppers devour what remains of the plantations after hail, leaving the earth sterile. 9. Darkness. A dense darkness covers Egypt for 3 days, interrupting all everyday activities. 10. Death of the firstborn, the most terrible of pests, where all the Egyptian firstborn are killed at midnight, except those protected by the blood of the Lamb during the first Easter of the Hebrews. Each plague was a powerful reminder of the divine judgment against the injustice and idolatry of Egypt, preparing the way for the liberation of the Hebrew people with the celebration of Easter as a milestone of the covenant between God and his people. Part 7. The Red Sea crossing. In this exciting chapter of the Exodus, we are led to witness the extraordinary miracle of the Red Sea crossing by the Hebrew people. Following the liberation of slavery in Egypt and the hasty departure towards freedom, the Hebrews are trapped between the turbulent waters of the sea and Pharaoh's furious army in their relentless persecution. Faced with the apparent impossibility of escaping, God once again manifests his supernatural power in favor of his chosen people. A column of cloud and fire goes down from heaven to protect and guide the Hebrews in their way, illuminating the darkness of the night and bringing hope in the midst of despair. With a divine breath, the Red Sea waters open before the astonished eyes of the Hebrews, revealing a safe and dry path through the aquatic depths. The sons of Israel cross the seabed, with walls of water raised as walls of protection around them, witnessing the unparalleled power of the God who set them free. Meanwhile, the Egyptian army advances ruthlessly toward the Hebrews, confident in their victory over the fugitive captives. However, when the last rows of the Hebrews reach the opposite margin of the sea, the waters return to their original fury, swallowing the Egyptian soldiers in a whirlwind of destruction. The miraculous Red Sea crossing not only ensures the safety and freedom of the Hebrew people, but also marks an unforgettable moment of divine intervention in the history of redemption. The victory celebrated with songs of praise and gratitude for the miraculous salvation granted by the powerful arm of the Lord. Part 8. God guides by the desert. In this 8th act of the journey of the Exodus, we are led to contemplate God's extraordinary provision and guidance for his people during the desert crossing. Following the miraculous liberation of slavery in Egypt and the exciting crossing of the Red Sea, the Hebrews are faced with a new challenge, surviving in the arid and hostile lands of the desert. Conducted by the divine presence manifested in a cloud column during the day and a column of fire at night, the children of Israel go on, relying on the heavenly tab for each step taken. The cloud protects them from the scorching heat of the sun, as the fire warms them on cold nights, constantly reminding them of God's constant presence in the midst of adversity. In addition to physical orientation, God also provides food and water to support his people in the desert. Daily, heavenly manna is sent from above to satisfy the hunger of the Hebrews, covering the floor like morning dew. In the most arid hours, water gushes miraculously from a rock dry by a divine touch, quenching the thirsty thirst. Although the arid and inclementary conditions of the desert may have caused murmurings and doubts among the Hebrews, God remains faithful to provide all the needs of his people. The desert journey is not only a test of physical resistance, but also an opportunity to strengthen faith and dependence on God as a sovereign provider and infallible guide. Thus, under the protective shadow of the divine column, the people advance to the promised land with renewed hope and gratitude for the incessant care of the Lord. Part 9. Revelation on Mount Sinai. In this 9th act of the journey of the Exodus, we are led to Mount Sinai, a sacred place where Moses is called by God to receive the 10 Commandments and divine instructions for the Hebrew people. After the miraculous crossing of the Red Sea and the desert journey, the sons of Israel camp at the mountain's feet, awaiting heavenly revelation. Moses, chosen as a mediator between God and the people, rises to the hill wrapped in dark clouds and resounding thunder, indicating the majestic presence of the Most High. At the top of the mountain he is wrapped in a resplendent light, emanating from divine glory, filling his heart with reverent fear and admiration. In a solemn moment of communion with the Creator, God gives Moses the tablets of the law containing the 10 Commandments, moral and spiritual foundations, that will guide the conduct of the Hebrew people and establish the covenant between them and the Lord. Each commandment is an expression of divine love for humanity and a call to holiness and justice. While Moses remains on the hill for 40 days and 40 nights, immersed in the presence of God, the rest of the people eagerly awaits his return. Revelation on Mount Sinai marks a crucial moment in the history of Israel, where divine will is clearly and unequivocally manifested to guide its people towards true spiritual freedom. Part 10. The Golden Calf and the Intercession in this exciting outcome of the Exodus saga. We are confronted with the fragility and moral fall of the Hebrew people in the face of earthly temptations. While Moses remained on Mount Sinai in communion with God, the rest of the people succumbed to impatience and anxiety for the absence of their spiritual leader. In a moment of spiritual weakness and disobedience, the people pressed Aaron, brother of Moses, to create an idol who could represent the divinity that guided them. Thus, using the resources available in the desert, Aaron shaped a gold calf as an object of worship and worship. The idolatry of the golden calf represented not only a transgression to the newly managed divine commandments on Mount Sinai, but also a betrayal of the covenant established between God and his chosen people. Divine wrath was lit in the face of the infidelity of the Hebrews and the quick apostasy to worship false gods. However, even in the face of the just indignation of the Lord, Moses interceded for the people with fervor and compassion. Dipping on the hill with the laws of the law in hand, he personally witnessed the rebellion and idolatry that had taken over the camp. With zeal for the glory of God and love for his Hebrew brothers, Moses broke the boards of the law as a sign of the breakup of the covenant caused by the infidelity of the people. He then confronted Aaron about his participation in the construction of the golden idol and sought to restore the purity of worship to the one true God. The courageous intercession of Moses resulted in divine mercy on the repentant people. God renewed his covenant with Israel and instructed Moses in building a tabernacle as a sacred place for his presence among his people. Thus ends this epic journey of Exodus, marked by liberation, redemption, divine provision, and constant merciful love. May we learn from the lessons of this biblical narrative and always seek to live in faithfulness to our sovereign God. If you want to know more about the amazing Bible stories or share your spiritual reflections with us, be sure to subscribe to the channel and leave your light. I hope you enjoyed this exciting narrative about how freedom was achieved by God's powerful act. Always remember that true freedom is in following the one who frees us with love and power. Until the next video.